All right, everyone. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. A little bit of karma comeuppance for Joe Biden, who has been playing the race card on Trump this whole time. He's like, well, Trump is a racist. And Sanders has taken this up, too, not to be outdone. Trump is a racist. I'd like to punch that fucker in the face. He's so xenophobic. You know, you remember that, like, during the election when he said he'd like to smack him, and Trump was bemused by this. It's like, you know, come on, Joe. You're in your mid-70s even back then. You're not really intimidating people for the most part. It was very funny. It was sort of like when Pelosi clapped sideways and it was like, yas, Queen Slay. It's like, this is a woman who's 75, I think. Give it a fucking rest. These people all, you know, some of these people, they're nuts. They need to be in a retirement home at this point because I doubt they can even wipe their own assholes. But leftists now are coming out because Joe Biden's the front runner, so naturally he's the one that draws the most fire. Joe Biden is a lightning rod for it because he's had a long, distinguished career in U.S. politics. As a Blue Dog Democrat who defended against busing, as a Blue Dog Democrat who said, well, I worked well with segregationists and things like that. Now, when I look at it, I say the past is the past. For someone to have supported something 40 fucking years ago or 50 fucking years ago, and like they're like, well, it's not an issue now, I don't really give a fuck. It's like when people say, well, reparations. No, I don't support reparations. No black person alive in the country today was legally enslaved. Unless they came from, you know, Libya or something like that, then they might have been a slave for a while, or Haiti. Slavery is common in those two countries especially. And in Thailand. And in China, actually. Believe it or not, there's millions of slaves in China. Hell, actually, technically there's 2 billion slaves in China because they're communistic. But it's funny because the left goes after Joe Biden for, like, his racial statements. I don't really care. The fact that Joe Biden penned a letter saying, well, yes, this legislation is to prevent the federal government from busing, you know, in the context of the civil rights era. Busing was the concept that you would take students of different colors and integrate the schools by busing them around in order to try to break sort of the segregationist stigmas of the era. Now, I think that in Biden's case, I believe his particular argument was that it was not meant to be a federal power, and so he didn't want that on a national level, I think. I don't think it was he was against integration itself per se, but the thing is, that rational distinction is not going to be made by any modern leftist Democrat. And it's funny, I watched Bernie Sanders up on stage, getting off the Biden situation for a minute here. It's just amusing to me. Bernie Sanders since the 70s has said, I'm a socialist, ha ha ha, universal free shit for everybody. He's been considered, like, you know, way too far out left field to even be a Democrat until, you know, the last decade or so. All of a sudden, and in somewhere in his increasingly dim geriatric mind, you can see when he looks out at the crowd when he's asked questions, you can see the gears turning. And you can tell he's fucking pissed. Bernie Sanders got schlonged in the last election, which he did. He got cheated by the DNC. Not sure he would have won anyway, but they treated him unfairly in basically what was a two-person race. He had a 50-50 shot of it if it hadn't been a Clinton, basically. He's realizing that the new crop of Democrats is so fucking far left and opportunistic, and they lie so much about the wonderful, grandiose Green Deal and all the other shit that they want to pass. He's a centrist in the field now. He's in the center of the Democratic field. Bernie goddamn fucking Sanders is in the middle of the pack when it comes to his ideology. Because he's not nearly as anti-gun as many of these others. He's like, well, yeah, some gun control's okay. And it's like universal health care. Okay, half the people up on the field believe in that. The other half believe in more subsidies. So he's sort of, you know, waffling around in there. Free education. Hell, a lot of these people go further than he does. He's no longer even the furthest left. When Bernie Sanders is not the furthest left individual on a U.S. political stage, you know the situation is hopelessly lost. Buttigieg, meanwhile, he's sort of trying to play sane man as far as the top-rung candidates go, and Joe Biden. But Joe Biden has a history, a long history. Now, in a normal election, having a long history of being in office is generally a good thing. In Biden's case, it breaks down because he was not a left-wing Democrat. He was never a progressive, like on the forefront of social issues. He's a standard Democrat. He's like Al Gore or something. A few wedge issues here and there, he'll go far left on. The rest he stays in the center of the field. That's a problem for the Democratic primaries. I still think he has a huge advantage and probably becomes the nominee. But it could be that doesn't happen if he keeps taking fire from the far left. I just think that solidifies maybe 25-30% of the party under him because he's the only one that looks sane. So I think it might actually help Biden among his core fans. And 25-30% he can win with that. As long as he focuses on the first few states heavily and lets the rest sort itself out. If I were Joe Biden, I would spend 100% of my time, almost, campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire. And I would spend almost all the rest in South Carolina and Nevada. And I'd probably spend a little bit of time in Vermont to buff up my support here in order to try to, hope beyond hope that you can take that away from Bernie. Because if Bernie Sanders does crack through in New Hampshire, maybe wins like Nevada or a couple states, if he does that, then you definitely want to shame him in his home state of Vermont. And it is possible. Just like Biden could lose Iowa. Bernie Sanders has 25,000 fuckers on the ground there. I think Biden, as well, just lost his top fundraising apparatus. A couple days ago, I think, was it some group that did a lot of fundraising for Biden has abandoned him. Not that he's not way out in front in the Dem field money-wise. He doesn't have money problems. It's just it doesn't look good for him. It's a slap in his face from a group that was powerfully supporting him. Now they no longer do. I don't know who they've endorsed after. Probably Warren or somebody like that. Yeah, Bernie Sanders isn't even considered far left by these freaks anymore. Which is probably why they'll lose in 2020, because they'll have some weirdo up there on stage trying to debate Trump and saying weird shit. Trump will be like, how are you going to pay for it? And he won't be able to answer, just like Yang can't answer. By the way, still chuckling about the Yang boss. And now Williamson, the homeopath, psychotropic healer sort of candidate, the anti-vaxxer up on stage for the Dem Party, the chemtrail candidate, she's joined the Yang train in complaining that her mic was fucked up and she was being censored at the debate. And it's like, yeah. When you do so badly that you have to give excuses, just fucking throw in the towel. But leftists playing the race card on Biden is pretty funny, because he does deserve it. It'll be funny if they do that to Sanders too. It'd be funny if some people said, well, no more old white men leading the party, and they throw race at Bernie Sanders and knock him down a peg too. Because both of them, Biden and Sanders, have made a habit of saying Trump is a racist. Oh, Trump is a racist. Now, they can't point out an example of racism. All they can say is he wants to close the border and deport people. He must be racist. Well, Hispanic isn't a race. Mexico isn't a race. It's a Latino, Latina. You're not really talking about race in this truly genetic sense. You're not even really talking about ethnocentrism. You're talking about, guarding the border, which is something, by the way, Biden's a total hypocrite on. And Sanders, too. Coulter pointed this out, she be damned, but she pointed this out. Bernie Sanders 10 years ago, he's like, we have to have border control because it'll hurt U.S. workers if we don't. And it's not wrong. And you're crazy if you think that he actually genuinely would do anything about the border situation. Trump is the only one who will do that. Even Gabbard wouldn't. No, she'd throw it open probably too. Trump is actually walking the walk, which is why all of the U.S. government is obstructing him, because they're freaking out about the idea that he might solve a problem. Government doesn't like to solve problems because then it can't charge you a bunch of money to keep managing the problem. It's sort of like pharma companies. They don't want to develop cures, they want to develop treatments. They don't want a cure for AIDS. They want to create a new antiretroviral that's, able to be marketed to people and is effective. They don't want you to die, because then you stop buying things, but they don't want you to be non-reliant upon them. It's the whole problem with our medical infrastructure in the whole fucking Western world. And in socialized countries, they won't even give you that. Oh, they care about your general health, but they won't take care of you for catastrophic or anything like that. You'll have to wait in line for 6 months to get a transplant. Oh, you need skin grafts? Oh, yeah, the rat poison burned your flesh off? Well, 2 years later, maybe you'll stop looking like a ghoul. A little bit of a problem. Seeing Joe Biden get his comeuppance is sweet, though. He is a turd. Joe Biden's a turd, and think he's one of the sane candidates. He's a centrist. In fact, they consider him too right-wing. Same with Buttigieg. It's funny, Vox, I think, attacked him there, and they're like, well, Buttigieg can't make it because, he's not far left enough. And it's like, well, yeah, for the modern Democratic Party, there's no clue. I expected Maxine Waters to throw her hat in the ring. Or some other person's, completely fucking lost it. Completely batshit. That's about all. Peace out.